Hi everyone, welcome back to the workshop, and this is part 2 of the Matrix LCR meter, the MCR-5200 repair video. Now in the part 1 video you saw me have a look at what the actual fault was, and that was the display was just freezing up randomly. The whole thing would just lock up just off its own accord quite randomly, and I did probe around the circuit board looking for any issues, couldn't find anything, and eventually I tried replacing the RAM IC on the microcontroller, because quite often RAM ICs are prone to failure, ESD damage, static damage, that sort of thing. I replaced the RAM IC and it didn't clear the problem. Now I also asked at the end of that part 1 video if anyone had any suggestions. It would be really good to get some ideas and try a few of them out and see if we can't affect a repair in this part 2. Now what I did do is I copied all the comments from the last video, just about every single one of them, and there was quite a lot, and I actually pasted them into ChatGPT and says, look, give me a summary of all the different faults that people are suggesting might be wrong with this unit, because a lot of the faults were repeated through different comments from different people and that sort of thing. And so I went ahead and did that, and ChatGPT gave me a lovely bulleted list, as you can see here. So I'm going to go through some of them. I'm going to try the ones I think are possibly more of an issue than some of the other ones at first, and let's see if we can't get this unit properly repaired. So I think first off we'll look at the USB flash drive here, because as you saw in the first video, as soon as I plug this in it just freezes up the display. Now it's obviously not meant to do that. It's meant to give a little message at the bottom here that you've actually plugged something in, which will then prompt you to go way off to the setup menu to then load in new firmware, etc. But that doesn't happen. As soon as you plug it in, it actually freezes straight away. Now Matrix did tell me how to format the card, because there's different ways of formatting a USB flash, and I have done that and it doesn't make any difference. If I can show you here now, so I'll just plug this in, and you can see straight away the number freezes up. The little wee symbol here that rotates is now frozen, and every single button is basically frozen up. And the only way to get resolve that is you can't unplug that. It doesn't make any difference. You have to turn off the power and turn it on again. Now one of the comments that I did get back is try plugging in the USB flash before you switch on power, in case this flash drive here is somehow or other spiking that 5-volt rail and possibly causing the microcontroller to crash. Well, we'll try that right now. Plug it in, switch on power. And it gets to the display, but before it's got a chance to actually update with any readings, it just completely freezes, as you'll see here. So I'll try that again. Now, because these USB flashes are so small in terms of current consumption, it shouldn't really affect the power supply on the main board there. And I had actually scoped the power supply in the last video and made sure that at the point where it freezes there is no spikes up or down the way on the 3.3 volt rail or the 5 volt rail. So by having this plugged in at first, I think it's a software issue, and part of the boot process is it's going to try and access that drive, and at that point it's possibly crashing. The next step I'm going to do is, as per one of the comments on my list, is let's scope the data lines to the USB drive and let's see if I can see anything on the scope. Okay, so I've got it powered up and I've got the scope hooked up here. So let's go on to this header here, which just simply goes away off to the front panel and that USB socket there. So the first one here, that is 5 volt supply. Then I've got nothing, 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 and nothing. So let me plug in the USB stick. And it's frozen up. Display is frozen up. So back onto this pin out here. I don't know which one's which. That looks to be the 5-volt supply again. And that looks to be one of the data lines. And it's still running, even though the display has frozen. Well, that's interesting. That's telling me that the microcontroller's actually still running, because that USB interface is back onto the microcontroller there. So the next one along, that's the other data line, which is the inverse of the first one. I'll just go back again. Yep. Both the data lines are running on the header. And the other two are at 0 volts. One will be ground, and I'm not sure what the fifth one will be. It might just be the earth connection onto the actual chassis of the USB socket itself. But yeah, 5-volt supply. Got one of the data lines, and we've got the other data lines. And if I unplug the USB stick, that data line disappears. I think the microcontroller is still running. And if I plug it in again, the display is still frozen. And it looks like it's dead now. Wow. Now it could be, this could get even weirder. It could be that the microcontroller is now trying to access the stick, but the stick's not responding and it's stuck in a loop there, and that's maybe why the display doesn't update now. Still doesn't explain why I get random crashes and exactly the same freezing up the display, even though I don't plug in a USB stick, just with the unit sitting on its own. Doesn't really explain that. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to probe the reset pin of the microcontroller, and I'm actually going to force a reset, and let's see if it can jump that microcontroller out of its loop or its crashed position. So let me just put power on there. Now, as you can see, just the numbers are updating, and I've located the reset pin, and I've got a nice sharp probe to just reset it to ground. And you can see it reset there, and yes, it reset it while it's running. So now let's try it in its crash state. Okay, that's it crashed. So let me just remove that. And let's try resetting it again. It's pin 35 on the microcontroller. And yes. Yep. So looks like we've definitely got an issue around the microcontroller. Now there is actually one thing I actually tried before I actually started this part 2 video, and that was to put extra capacitors, as you'll see here, on the 5-volt and the 3.3-volt rail, just in case there was any sort of issue there on the power supply side, and that didn't make any difference whatsoever. But for the time being, I'm leaving those 2 new electrolytic capacitors there in circuit. But the next thing I'm going to try, I'm actually going to get the freezer spray out and the heat gun, and let's see if we can induce the crashing problem that we were seeing just by cooling down the circuit board or the parts on them and heating them up as well. Okay, well I've run out of freezer spray, but I'll try my air duster. It does produce very cold air, especially if you tilt the can, non-conductive of course, so off we go. That's around the CPU microcontroller section there. No crash. DPLV and the crystals. Oh, that's cold. No crash. No crash. No crash. In and around the microcontroller again. Oh, that is cold. Nope, no crash at all. Let's try a little bit of heat now. I'll try the microcontroller first. And the crystal, because that's right next to it. And the CPLD. Nope. The RAM. And the power supply section. Nope. The USB interface and that controller IC. Nope. And on to some of the shift registers here. And the analog section. Nope. And a lot of the other circuitry in and around the unit. Even onto the power supply. Nope. Well, cooling down the circuit board and the parts on it and heating up didn't seem to make any difference. On to the next suggestion, and that was try disconnecting this interface at the back of the unit, which comes down onto a header on the circuit board, because maybe that was somehow interfering with the circuit. So let's try that now. Power's off at the moment. These are glued in, these headers. Come out no problem at all. A little bit of glue there. That's it disconnected. So let's try powering that up and see what happens. Well, it's powered up, but I'm not going to hang about and wait for a crash. I'm just going to try the USB issue. Let's plug that in and see what happens. Yep, and it's crashed as per normal. So I don't think that interface at the back of the unit there is having any impact at all on the crashing issue, to tell you the truth. I think it's just a simple shift register there, creating a number of parallel I/O which go off to the connector there. So I think I can plug that in quite safely. But there is another header here which goes way off to the back of the board there. I'm not really sure what that's for. It's probably interfacing to some of that optional I/O at the back of the unit there, because there's some unpopulated pads and etc. on the back of the unit there, and also the RS-232 interface. So I'll try disconnecting that one there. You never know. That's it disconnected. And let's power it up. Now I've still got data on the display. I'll try plugging in the USB. And yep, crashes straight away. So yep, so I think we can rule out that part of the circuit there. Now all this time I have been using the recommended by Matrix, a USB 2 USB flash drive, 4GB, formatted FAT32, and well, I do actually have a 512MB one here. Let's try that one. That one was suggested in the comments of the last video. So let's plug it in. Nope, exactly the same, just crashes straight away. So I think the next thing I'm going to try, as suggested in the comments of the last video, was try changing the crystal. You know, they can be a little bit temperamental. Well, to tell you the truth, I don't think I have ever had a crystal failure on a microprocessor board of any kind. However, I have gone ahead and bought a 12 MHz crystal, so I'll go and fit that now just to rule it out, and let's see if that makes any difference. Well, and there's the circuit board out of the unit. The power supply section I've left back in, and as you can see, there's virtually nothing on the underside. A few decoupling capacitors there on the microcontroller and the CPLD, and a few other ones scattered around. Kind of looks like they've been soldered by hand, because there's still flux on them. A couple over there, and nothing much else. But anyway, I've now got access to this 12 megahertz crystal there, which I'm going to change out because that's interfaced to the microcontroller. So I'll desolder that one now, and let's get the new one in. Now I'm just going to desolder it by hand. And that's it. As you can see, it's got a little bit of insulation there just to stop the metal can of the package shorting out onto the circuit board. So we'll try and keep that, put it on new crystal. So let's just get rid of some of that solder on those pins there. Yep. And let's just take off, I think it's a little bit of a neoprene actually, it feels like it. Yeah, neoprene. Still got the adhesive on this other side. Yeah, actually I'm not happy at all with that glue on that neoprene, just in case it has any influence on the actual crystal itself. So I think I'll make my own little insulator from something else, and we'll use it instead. I think I'll use one of these and cut it down to size and pierce a couple of holes in it. So let me go away and prepare that, and I'll come back. And there it is. I think that'll do nicely. So let me fit it to the board. Okay, there's it fitted. Ready to fit back in the unit and try again. Okay, ready for power up. Not put all the screws back in, but enough to give a ground connection and some of the headers and the LCD, etc. So let's power it up. And it's booting up, so let's try the USB stick out of interest. Wow! That's it! That's it! U-Disc is available. That's exactly what should come up. I think it was a crystal. And you've got the little symbol there for the USB stick. So let's just unplug that. U-Disc is removed. Not crashed. So let's power off and power on again. And let's try that again. Yes! Now, I don't have all the screws in, and I don't have the interface board connected, and some of the front panel headers there. So let me go away and put all the screws in, all the headers, etc., and let's see if it's still working. Okay, got all the screws in, got all the headers in, including the front panel BNC sockets, got the interface board connected with its header. Everything's back as it should be. So let's power it up and let's see what happens. Okay. Yep, and let's plug in the USB stick. And yes, U-Disc is available. Wow! And if I just press around the circuit board, including the microcontroller section, the crystal, everything else, it's perfect. Yep. Wow. So it looks like it was a crystal all along. So there's the list there that came originally from the comments of the last video, and most of the stuff there I'd managed to check off that wasn't the problem. And you can see number 7 and number 8 there. Inspect the oscillator and crystals, and check the MCU crystal oscillator. So yeah, looks like that's what the problem was. Well, I'm not actually going to tempt fate by upgrading the firmware. Tell you the truth, I don't want it to crash or have some other issue and I end up bricking the device. At least not now anyway. I think I'm going to run it for a while, especially as I want to make sure that the random crashing problem has disappeared as well. I'm quite confident that's now gone, given we've fixed the USB issue. I think it's one and the same problem, to tell you the truth. And if I run it for a few weeks, maybe powered up 24/7 for a while, and I get no crashes whatsoever, then I think I'll be confident enough then to upgrade the firmware. But I don't really know what version of firmware I have been given, or whether the one that's currently installed is the most up to date. I don't know. I'll check that out in maybe a few weeks' time. But for now, let me put the unit back together again, get it up on the shelf, and let's get it powered up and leave it that way. Okay, there's the unit back onto the workbench. So let me just try plugging in a USB disc. And yes, it looks like it's working okay. So I'll just leave the unit running now. I'll leave it overnight at the very least, and check and see if it crashes again. But looks like it was the crystal at fault. If it wasn't the crystal, it was maybe the glue on the neoprene on that crystal there that was interfering with the actual crystal oscillation itself. And finally now I can go back to Matrix and tell them the unit's up and running and give them a wee report, or at least point them towards this video to let them know what the resolution was. But anyway, thanks for watching, and remember to comment down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel grow. There's plenty more repair videos on my channel, from the simple to the complex. Check them out, and thanks for watching.